What does it really mean? Heritage, what does it really mean? I bet all of you would have experienced buildings that don't seem to have been built yesterday, but many, many years ago. What do these buildings tell you? Do they speak to you? What would life be without them? Is heritage only about buildings, or there is more to it? Do we experience heritage in our own families, in our neighborhoods? Yes, of course. Even intangible, the way we relate to our teachers, the respect we give them, the clothes we wear, is all what we can call our heritage, our Sanskrit. My experience as a conservation architect began when I graduated and I decided I'm going to travel the length and breadth of this country, and more specifically the land I come from, which is Punjab. I came across buildings which were monumental, like the Red Fort in Delhi or other monuments that we go to as tourists, to sacred sites like the Golden Temple in Amritsar. I began my work with making inventories, making databases of historic buildings. And I came across this little temple. It looked very simple, it looked very modest. I didn't expect that I'm going to find something in it. And lo and behold, the moment I went in, I was awestruck. In this remote village in Punjab, in this little temple called the Krishna Mandir in Kishankot village, were these over 1,000 square feet of wall paintings. Now the village looked very poor. And why did this building even survive? Why wasn't it just, removed for its bricks or, to make a new building, a dukaan, a shop? It continues to survive. Not only did the village have the temple, it also had land associated with the temple which had a village water body. The question that I asked myself, does the condition of these buildings tell us that people don't care about the heritage? Or is it that they have survived? It means the heritage, the buildings, the spaces mean something for these people. And this was really the first building I got to work with. So what we did was, we put a team together. We put a team together of conservation architects, of art conservators because of the paintings, of social workers, people who have the skill to talk to people, understand their needs, and work with them. And what we realized was that we need to develop tools which are not taught in colleges, is that how do we engage the village community in every activity of the conservation planning. So we had the mason work with us on doing the measure drawings. We had the children of the village work with the art conservators to remove these layers of this, lime wash that had been applied to the surfaces of the wall paintings. We introduced a new material. Historically, the buildings were built with lime and not cement. So even to understand how to work with lime and to give our workers the knowledge, how does lime work? Why is it environmental friendly? What are the principles by which it consolidates? And give access to our masons and the unskilled workers so that they feel proud about what are they working with and feel intellectually engaged and not just workers. We did photo documentation of the wall paintings, and the pandit, the caretakers were all around, children were all around watching all this work happen. Restoration began. And what we realized was that as the buildings, because our team was living in the village, that the community became more and more comfortable in talking about themselves, about their inner truths, about the challenges they have faced. Women were talking about domestic violence, their need to have money in hand to be able to have control over their lives by, control over education and healthcare. Different forums were created for conversations. Men came to the larger, to the pond side for conversations. For women, we had to go to their courtyards to have conversations. We also socialized the project in such a way that the temple courtyard was used for community activities. Through this project, we all understood, I understood, that to conserve is to heal. And the condition of a historic building is not about people do not care about the heritage. It tells us that there are social issues. It is actually a barometer that actually tells us the health of a community. I have had the opportunity to work on very large buildings. On the Red Fort, it was the first monument of India where a private consultancy firm, which is headed by me, to prepare the conservation management plan for the Red Fort. It was, a large part of it was with the army and a small part of it was accessible by the community, by people to visit. But in the course of the conservation of the Red Fort, it is now, the entire fort is now a public space. We also have to remember the fort is not just a building which was built 400 years ago, which is of architectural significance. It actually represents, if you look at the nomination dossier, it's inscribed as a World Heritage Site, that it represents the idea of independent India. It was here on 15th August 1947 that the flag of independent India was hoisted. So when we did the nomination dossier and the management plan, we recognized that the Red Fort is more than just a monument, a beautiful piece of architecture. It is my work in Amritsar that brought me to understand more about the role historic buildings can play in terms of creating a space for dialogue, a space for inclusive development, a space for where people can converse. And I would say, we have social media where the space is fractured. There is dialogue, but there is also a place for, discomfort as well. But physical spaces in our cities can actually become spaces for communication, dialogue, co-creation, co-production, and sharing and celebrating ourselves. The Ramba Gate is what we came across. A gate which represents a legacy of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. It's the only surviving gate of the walled city of Amritsar. We found it in a very, very sad condition. And not because the fact that, again, like I said, the fact that it exists means somewhere in the subconscious people want it. But what is the reason why it was decaying? And one being maybe that we don't have the skills. People do not have the skills or the planning documents or the legislation does not provide for integrating historic buildings into our cityscape. Not only was it just a gate, it also has a segment of the rampart. And on the rampart is this little school in a very poor condition. These are the children who were in that school, and there were 5 classes being run out of 2 rooms. There's a printing press, a 100-year-old printing press. And what was very, very enriching for us was the dialogue with the people working at the press. There was a gentleman who gave us a story that he actually works towards not getting a promotion because he wants to work in the printing press, because he loves doing the work that he does. All of these stories were inspiring us to contribute to the lives of the people who inhabit this historic building, even if it was in a bad condition. There's a market all around. And we had conversations with the market people, and we realized that these were the people who, when we were talking to them about what did this building mean to them, or what is their heritage, the narrative was, our ancestors got this area, this shop, as part of the rehabilitation strategy post the partition of India in 1957. They were refugees. So again, all of this contributed in our understanding that what should the method and what should be the new use of this building post-conservation. We slowly started restoring the monument. The school. We worked out the space in such a way that all the 5 classes got the 5 classrooms. We also looked at the quality of furniture, space, lighting, all of that. And I must say, what was very gratifying was the teachers. one could see their heart lie with the students, and it was really a very, very enriching dialogue. The printing press got upgraded. Now, how do you get people living outside the monument to start engaging with this whole process of the monument? And that's when we started the conversation with people in the setting. And we looked at, Maharaja Ranjit Singh's period of wall paintings. It's called the Sikh School of Painting or the Lahore School of Painting. And they have a certain color palette. So we used references of buildings both in Amritsar and Lahore to develop a palette to embellish the facades of these buildings, and we created a new ambience for the whole place. People enjoyed it, and in fact we asked them that, what do you think about it? And they said, we haven't had the opportunity to even paint the building, but you have done Rogan to our buildings. You've actually done Rang Rogan, which has added color to our setting. Now, what do we house in this building? So while we restored the school to the children and the printing press to the workers in the printing press, what do we house in this was the big question. So when we asked the people in the setting, what would you like? And they said, we'd like tourists to come here. So I said, would you like to tell your story to the tourists who come? What would you like to tell them? They said, yes, of course. We would love to tell them about the city of Amritsar. So that led us to mapping the narratives of Amritsar, not from what is in the books, but what we get to see in the landscape when you walk in the landscape. So all the historic buildings are buildings which had historic buildings. We walked, and it's not just me, it's a team of architects and researchers. And we documented their stories. And we realized that the way the stories can be told, the city of Amritsar, like any other city, there are themes under which the stories can be told. And for Amritsar, it was reverence. The founding of the city was with the Golden Temple. And there are multi-layered narratives of multiple religions and faiths and diversity. So reverence was this important theme. Then was remembrance. The city has seen a lot of sacrifices. Even if you were to look at just the 20th century, you have Jallianwala Bagh, you have the 1947 partition, and a loss of life, and it can go on if you were to go back into time. There was a revelation that as you keep looking at one layer of history and you get layers and layers and layers of history. And it's not just about history, it's about stories of people, it's about food, it's about multiple strands of the narrative. Then came the celebratory aspect of the Punjabi spirit, so resonance. And finally, reconciliation. That yes, there's been a lot of pain, there has been a lot of loss, but that does not mean we need to have revenge of what has happened, but we need to reconcile to the spirit of coexistence, of oneness in humanity. And that informed the narrative for the use of the Rambagh Gate, which we call the Lok Virsa Museum. Now, what are the skills we're going to use to even tell the story? So then we mapped the crafts of the walled city of Amritsar. And we found amazing, it's like if you were to look at the walled city of Amritsar and remove the roofs of each of the buildings, you will actually see every room there is somebody doing something. Nobody is idle. So it is these crafts that we would use to do the exhibition. And this is how the space transformed. This is the central space to reverence. What you see in this hall and what you see in the chandelier is actually created from all the chudas and the malas and all the embellishments that you buy for weddings. And that's how we created that chandelier. Spaces to reverence, I've shared. Space to remembrance, to reconciliation, to revelation were in different chambers of the building. The night before the inauguration, there was this Jago dance. And this is the idea that was given to us by the people who live around the Rambagh Gate. And I said, okay, so this is the most appropriate way of inviting people. So there was a procession that took place all the way to the town hall, to a large, where people, the singers, inviting the people of the walled city of Amritsar to that little area to come to the inauguration the next day. The inauguration was then, of course, the story of the gate through drama. And Amritsar has a very vibrant theatre community. And like that, we saw that, it is possible for people from different arts, they all got a voice, they all got a space to engage with celebrating their heritage. What was most interesting and gratifying was these little girls from the school. They came up to me and they said, Madam Ji, we also want to dance. Of course, they spoke in the local language. And I pretended I don't know why you want to dance. So I asked them, I said, why do you want to dance? They said, because we have a new school. So I asked the drummer to actually play the drums, and all these little children went onto the stage to do the dance. And this was the sign to me that yes, historic buildings, heritage conservation can actually heal communities. And to conserve is to heal. And the other thing that I also kind of recognize is lime buildings breathe. Lime is the material with which every brick of these monuments is put together. And lime is a breathable material because it carbonates, it's kind of good for environment. And more than just the physical characteristics, it is also, and the scientific characteristics, it's also the spirit of the place. And this was one little event that was held in the space of reverence, where the people from all the shops came, and that was the morning after the inauguration. So thank you very much, and enjoyed sharing our little journey.